The sound that broke the night wasn't the splash, it was the laughter. A wave of cruel, sharp, privileged laughter that echoed across the manicured lawns of the Willow Creek Oasis Club. 19-year-old Maya Reed surfaced in the icy, chlorinated water, her cheap polyester uniform clinging to her, her hair plastered to her face. She was drowning, not in the pool, but in the humiliation. Every smartphone camera was pointed at her, a ring of mocking faces lit by tiki torches. And for a moment, she truly believed this was it. This was where her life ended. Until one quiet voice cut through the noise, and the entire world stopped. The alarm on Maya Reed's cracked smartphone was a tinny, desperate buzz, a sound she despised more than anything in the world. It was 5 a.m. Outside her small second-floor apartment, the sky was a bruised, inky purple, not yet ready to concede to the day. Maya slammed her hand on the snooze button, a ritual she allowed herself exactly once. 9 minutes. 9 minutes to lie in her lumpy mattress and pretend she was anyone else, anywhere else. But the pre-dawn quiet was broken by a soft, dry cough from the next room. Her mother, Sarah. That sound was a more effective alarm than any clock. Maya swung her legs out of bed, her feet hitting the cold laminate floor. The apartment was a collection of mismatched furniture and mounting debt, held together by the smell of instant coffee and the faint, antiseptic odor of her mother's medication. She padded into the kitchen, a tiny alcove with peeling linoleum, and started the coffee pot. While it gurgled, she went to the small bedroom. Sarah Reed was awake, her thin frame propped up on pillows. Her eyes, the same deep brown as Maya's, were cloudy with fatigue. "Hey, Mama," Maya whispered, smoothing her mother's hair. "How's the pain?" "Like a grumpy cat kneading my spine," Sarah murmured, her voice raspy. "But I'm okay. You're up early." "Big day at the club," Maya lied, forcing a bright smile. "The Midsummer White Party. You know, the event of the season." Sarah's smile was weak but genuine. "Don't let those people get to you, Maya. You're better than all of them." "I know, Mom." Maya kissed her forehead. "I'll make you breakfast." She microwaved some oatmeal, set out her mother's morning pills, a complex, color-coded arsenal against the multiple sclerosis that was slowly stealing her, and made her own breakfast. 2 slices of white bread, eaten plain, standing over the sink. By 5:45 a.m., she was in her uniform. It was a drab, beige polyester dress that was a size too large, designed to make the wearer as invisible as possible. She scraped her beautiful, wavy chestnut hair into a severe, tight bun that she knew would give her a headache by noon. Her last act was to grab her sketchbook, her one true treasure. She paused, looking at a half-finished drawing of a futuristic bridge. One day. She tucked it into her worn backpack alongside her server's apron, a spare pair of socks, a lesson learned the hard way, and a small, hopeful granola bar. The bus ride was 40 minutes of watching the city's gritty, working-class neighborhoods bleed into the pristine, tree-lined avenues of the suburbs. She was one of only 3 people on the bus by the time it reached the final stop, a discreet, unmarked road. She walked the last mile, up a long, winding drive hidden by 10-foot hedges. This was the back entrance, the employee entrance. As she clocked in, the kitchen was already a hive of frantic activity. The head chef was screaming about the quality of the ahi tuna and the scent of industrial-strength disinfectant mixed unpleasantly with baking bread. Mr. Henderson, the club manager, was standing by the schedule board, his face pinched. He was a man who lived in perpetual fear of the club's members. He spotted Maya. "Reed, you're on poolside service," he snapped, not making eye contact. "The main pool. The Vanderbilts are having a pre-party luncheon. Don't. You know, don't be you. Maya just nodded, her stomach tightening. Yes, Mr. Henderson. And Reed, he called as she turned to grab her tray. This is your last warning. We had 3 complaints about you last week. Slow service. Loitering. 1 member said you were staring. We can't have that. This is the Willow Creek Oasis, not a diner. Be invisible. Maya nodded again, the words last warning ringing in her ears. She thought of the pile of red-stamped medical bills on their kitchen table. She thought of her mother's new prescription, the one the insurance wouldn't cover. Being invisible was a luxury. She had to be perfect. She stepped out of the kitchen's gloom and into the blinding, perfectly curated sunshine of the Willow Creek Oasis. The water in the pool was a shade of blue that didn't exist in nature. The lawns were a vibrant, impossible green, and the air hummed with the quiet, terrifying sound of generational wealth. And sitting at the best cabana, like a queen holding court, was Tiffany Vanderbilt. Tiffany Vanderbilt was not just a person, she was an institution. At 20, she was the heiress to the Vanderbilt shipping fortune, a dynasty that had practically built the city and now owned half of it. She was blonde, perfectly toned, and possessed a casual, bored cruelty that she mistook for a personality. And for some reason, she had decided Maya Reed was her personal project for torment. It had started small, a snapped finger when Maya was 3 feet away, a complaint that her iced tea was too watery, forcing Maya to make 3 separate trips. A hilarious prank where she'd stuck her gum to the underside of a plate she handed back to Maya. Today, she was flanked by her 2 loyal, brainless lieutenants, Chad Kensington and Brittany Ann Bree St. James. Chad was a beefy trust fund athlete with a braying laugh, and Bree was a carbon copy of Tiffany, just with darker hair and slightly less expensive jewelry. Oh, look, Tiffany drawled as Maya approached, her voice carrying across the patio. It's the help. I was wondering when they'd let the B team out. Chad and Bree snickered. Maya kept her face a perfect, neutral mask, just as Mr. Henderson had trained her. Good morning, Miss Vanderbilt. Ms. St. James, Mr. Kensington. Can I get you something to drink? I don't know, Tiffany said, tapping her chin with her sunglasses. It's just so hard to decide. What do you think, Chad? Does she even know what a Bellini is? Probably thinks it's a kind of pasta, Chad barked, slapping his knee. Maya's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. A Bellini is white peach puree and Prosecco. We have an excellent Valdobbiadene, or would you prefer champagne? Tiffany's perfect smile faltered for a half-second. She was not used to the help being competent. She recovered quickly. Just get me a skinny soy latte, extra hot, and if it's not boiling, I'm sending it back. And so will you, she said, gesturing to Bree. And Chad will have whatever Chad drinks. 3 protein-only smoothies, Chad grunted, already looking at his phone. Right away, Maya said, turning on her heel. She spent the next 4 hours running. It wasn't just Tiffany's cabana. It was the whole pool deck. Every member seemed to be demanding, capricious, and impatient. By 3 p.m., the sun was a brutal hammer. Her beige uniform was dark with sweat, and her headache from the tight bun was a throbbing, pounding drum. She was clearing plates from a table near the edge of the property when she saw him. He was a man who didn't fit. He was sitting alone under a large oak tree, far from the pool and the noise. He was older, perhaps in his late 50s, with a shock of silver-grey hair and a face carved from granite. He wore a simple linen shirt and slacks, not the designer resort wear everyone else was sporting. He was out on his phone. He was reading a thick, hard-cover book. Maya had seen him before, maybe once or twice a month. The other staff called him Mr. Blackwood. He was, by all accounts, a nobody. He never ordered food, just black coffee. He never complained. He never even spoke, other than a quiet, "Thank you." Tiffany and her crew had a different name for him. The Hobo. "I mean, seriously," she'd heard Tiffany complain to Henderson last month. "Who let that creature in? His clothes are all rumpled. He's depressing the vibe." Henderson had just wrung his hands and said, "He's a life member, Ms. Vanderbilt. His family joined in the 1950s. There's nothing I can do." Today, as Maya passed, a gust of wind picked up. It was sudden, and it caught the edge of her large, empty tray, knocking a stack of linen napkins onto the grass near the man's feet. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Maya said, rushing to pick them up. She was flustered, her hands shaking from exhaustion. As she bent down, her sketchbook, which she'd foolishly tucked into her apron pocket, slipped out. It fell open. Open to her drawing of the bridge, a complex, elegant design of steel and glass. Before she could grab it, the man, Mr. Blackwood, leaned forward and picked it up. Maya froze. Her heart was in her throat. She was going to be fired. Loitering. Bothering members. He didn't look at her. He looked at the drawing. His eyes, a piercing, intelligent blue, scanned the page. He held it for a beat. 2, 3. Then he looked up at her. He didn't smile, but his expression wasn't angry. It was curious. "This is your design?" he asked. His voice was deep and quiet. It's just a doodle, sir. I'm so sorry. Please, He handed the sketchbook back to her, along with the napkins. His eyes held hers. "Don't apologize for talent, young lady. A bridge is a promise." Lawrence. Maya, a voracious reader, recognized the quote from the Stone Angel. She was so stunned, she simply stared. "Sir?" "Get back to work, Reed." Mr. Henderson's voice cracked across the lawn like a whip. He was power-walking toward them, his face a blotchy red. "What did I tell you about bothering the members?" "She wasn't bothering me, Henderson," Mr. Blackwood said, his voice still quiet, but carrying an edge that made the manager stop in his tracks. Blackwood turned back to his book. The conversation was over. Henderson grabbed Maya's arm, his fingers digging into her skin. "I saw that," he hissed. "I saw you harassing Mr. Blackwood. You're this close, Reed. This close. One more mistake. One. And you're cleaning out your locker. Now go take the Vanderbilt's dinner order." Maya rubbed her arm, her eyes stinging. She looked back at Mr. Blackwood, but he was lost in his book, just another shadow under a tree. She turned and walked back toward the pool, back toward Tiffany. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, ominous shadows. The real party was about to begin. The Midsummer White Party was the apex of the Willow Creek social calendar. The club's all-white rule was meant to be chic and ethereal. In reality, it just made the hundreds of guests look like a cult of smug ghosts. By 8 p.m., the sun had set, but the grounds were lit by 1,000,000 tiny fairy lights and gas-powered tiki torches that cast a flickering, hellish orange glow on the sea of white outfits. A string quartet soared away at a pop song, and the air was thick with expensive perfume and the high-pitched shriek of laughter. Maya was on her 10th hour. Her feet were 2 blocks of raw, throbbing pain. Her smile felt like it was carved from concrete. She was no longer a person. She was a drink-carrying, plate-clearing automaton. Her section was the worst, the grand, multi-level patio surrounding the main pool. This was where the younger set had congregated, and they were already several bottles of champagne deep. "Waitress," a voice slurred. Chad Kensington snapped his fingers at her. "More things. The little ones, with the fish eggs on them. The caviar blinis, sir. Right away," Maya said, pivoting. As she turned, she bumped squarely into Bree St. James, who was walking backward while trying to take a selfie. A full flute of champagne, sticky, expensive champagne, flew from Bree's hand and splashed all over the front of her white silk romper. A tiny, perfect O of horror formed on Bree's lips. The music seemed to stop. You, Bree stammered, her face turning crimson. You did that! You did that on purpose! I'm so sorry, Miss St. James. You backed into me, Maya pleaded, holding out a cocktail napkin. Let me get a damp cloth. Don't touch me, you clumsy cow, Bree shrieked, batting her hand away. Now Tiffany Vanderbilt was at her side, a predator scenting blood. Oh my God, Bree, she ruined it. She ruined your outfit. That was vintage Halston. Bree was now actually crying. Mr. Henderson, Tiffany roared, her voice cutting through the party. Mr. Henderson, come here now. The manager, who had been hovering by the dessert table, scurried over, his face pale. What is it, Miss Vanderbilt? What's wrong? Your waitress, Tiffany said, pointing a finger with a perfectly manicured nail right at Maya's chest. Just assaulted Bree. She threw an entire drink on her. I didn't, I swear, Maya said, her voice trembling. She backed into me. It was an accident. Henderson looked at Maya with pure, unadulterated hatred. This was the one mistake he was waiting for. Ms. Reed, that is a $4,000 outfit. What do you have to say for yourself? It was an accident, Maya whispered, her eyes pleading with him. Please, Mr. Henderson, I need this job. What you need, Tiffany spat, is to learn your place. I'll pay for the cleaning, Maya offered, knowing it was a laughably impossible promise. That was 2 months' rent. Cleaning? Bree wailed. It's ruined. This is unacceptable, Henderson said, his voice shaking. He was terrified of them. Reed, you are... Wait, Tiffany said, a slow, cruel smile spreading across her face. Don't fire her. Not yet. Henderson looked confused. Miss Vanderbilt? It's just... She looks so hot, Tiffany said, her eyes glittering with a new, terrible idea. All sweaty from her hard work, and that polyester. It's so flammable looking. Chad Kensington, sensing the shift in mood, moved to stand behind Maya, blocking her only exit. Bree had stopped crying and was now smiling, a mirror image of Tiffany's malice. What's wrong, Maya? Tiffany purred, using her first name for the first time. It felt like a violation. You look like you need to cool off. The circle was tightening, the music had faded, and dozens of guests were now watching, their faces a mixture of curiosity and bloodlust. They were bored, and here was a new, interesting game. Please, Maya whispered, backing up. I just need to get back to work. No, Chad said, his voice a low, drunken rumble. Tiffany's right, it's a pool party, and you're not in the pool. Maya backed up another step. Her heel hit the raised, tiled edge of the pool. She knew, with a sudden, sinking dread, exactly what was about to happen. She looked around for help. She saw 100 faces, all white, all watching. She saw Mr. Henderson, who was now polishing a wine glass, his back conspicuously turned to the scene. She looked to the edges of the crowd, searching for the oak tree. But Mr. Blackwood was gone. His table was empty. There was no one. You know, Tiffany said, stepping right up to her, my father always said you should dress for the job you want. But I guess in your case, you're just all washed up. And with that, Tiffany Vanderbilt put her hand on Maya's chest and pushed. The fall was a masterpiece of humiliation, a slow-motion tableau of disaster. Time seemed to stretch. Maya felt the single point of pressure from Tiffany's hand on her sternum. She felt her feet, trapped in their non-slip orthopedic shoes, lose their purchase on the slick tile. She felt the backward arc of her body, her arms windmilling uselessly, her tray clattering to the ground. She saw the ring of faces, Tiffany's triumphant sneer, Chad's idiotic grin, Bree's spiteful delight. She saw the flash of a dozen smartphone cameras, the white light searing her retinas. Then, the cold. It was a thermal shock, a brutal, icy slap that stole her breath. The chlorinated water rushed into her nose and mouth, tasting of chemicals and defeat. Her heavy uniform, designed for durability, not buoyancy, instantly became a lead weight. Her apron strings snagged on something under the water, and for a terrifying second, she was trapped. She thrashed, panicked, and her head broke the surface. The first thing she heard wasn't music. The quartet had stopped playing. The first thing she heard was a single, stunned beat of silence. And then, the laughter. It wasn't a titter. It was a roar, a braying, cascading, unanimous explosion of laughter from hundreds of people in white. They were pointing, howling. Chad Kensington was bent over, slapping his knee. Bree was filming, a high-pitched shriek coming from her throat. Maya Reed was treading water in the middle of a party, her hair a curtain of wet strands, mascara she couldn't afford stinging her eyes. She was drowning in the sound. She was 19 years old. Her mother was sick, her rent was due, and she was being laughed at by people who had never known a single day of real hardship. She paddled, her shoes like anchors, to the side of the pool. Her fingers grasped the tile, and she saw it. At the bottom of the shallow end, lit by the eerie blue underwater light, was her phone. The one she'd put in her apron pocket, the one with the cracked screen, the one that held the last 6 voicemails from her father before he died, the one with the photos of her mother, smiling, from last Christmas before the new round of treatments had stolen her hair. The screen flickered, went green, and then went black. That's when the tears came. Hot, angry tears that mixed with the cold pool water. She didn't care about the job anymore. She didn't care about the uniform. She only cared about that little black rectangle dying at the bottom of the pool. She put her hands on the edge to haul herself out, her body shaking so violently she could barely lift her own weight. "Oh, look!" Tiffany shouted, quieting the crowd for her next punchline. "She's crying. Did you get that, Bree? I'm sending it to the Oasis group chat right now. Maybe she'll float," Chad yelled. "Or does that polyester count as a sin?" The laughter erupted again, louder this time. Maya's arms gave out, and she slipped back, her chin hitting the tile with a painful crack. She was defeated. She just closed her eyes, ready to sink. Let them laugh. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. "That," a voice said, "is quite enough." It was not a loud voice. It was deep, calm, and carried the effortless authority of a thunderclap. The laughter didn't just fade. It died. It was sucked from the air, as if a vacuum had been turned on. The silence that followed was heavier and more profound than the noise had been. Maya opened her eyes. Standing at the edge of the pool, parting the sea of white-clad guests like a shark, was Julian Blackwood. He was no longer the rumpled man from under the tree. He had changed. He was wearing a simple, dark, and exquisitely tailored suit. He looked powerful. He wasn't looking at Tiffany. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking directly at Maya, his blue eyes aflame with an emotion she couldn't place. It wasn't pity. It was a cold, quiet rage. He walked to the edge where she was clinging, her knuckles white. The crowd, dozens of them, took a collective shuffling step backward, as if his very presence had a physical force. Mr. Blackwood knelt, not caring about the bespoke trousers or the wet pool deck. He extended his hand. A large, strong, steady hand. "Miss Reed," he said. his voice a low rumble just for her. "Are you all right?" Maya was so stunned she could only nod, her teeth chattering. "Take my hand." She did. His grip was firm, and with one effortless pull, he lifted her from the pool as if she weighed nothing. She stood there, dripping, shivering, a pathetic, sodden creature in the center of 100 gaping faces. Mr. Blackwood didn't pause. He shrugged off his own suit jacket, a dark, heavy cashmere, and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was warm from his body and smelled faintly of cedar and expensive tobacco. The entire party was frozen, a perfect, silent photograph of shock. Julian Blackwood finally turned his head and let his gaze fall on the queen of the party. "Tiffany," he said. His voice was no longer quiet. It was steel. Tiffany Vanderbilt had never been spoken to in that tone in her life. It wasn't the tone of a sycophantic manager or a fawning suitor, or even a mildly annoyed father. It was the tone of a judge pronouncing a sentence. Her smile faltered, becoming a trembling, uncertain grimace. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, attempting a light, flirtatious laugh. It came out like a strangled bird. You're at the party. We were just—" She slipped. It was a clumsy accident, wasn't it, Bree? Bree, who was still holding her phone up, suddenly looked as if she'd been caught holding a bomb. She frantically tried to hide it behind her back. She slipped, Bree stammered. Total slip. Julian Blackwood's eyes didn't move from Tiffany. "She slipped. With assistance from you, Miss Vanderbilt, and I believe a shove from Mr. Kensington." Chad Kensington, who had been laughing moments before, went a shade of white that matched his linen shirt. "Hey man, I didn't touch her." "My eyesight is excellent, Mr. Kensington," Blackwood said. He turned his gaze to the crowd. "As is, apparently, the eyesight of the 20 or 30 people I see still recording this incident. Please, send your videos to the club's general manager. I'd like them all reviewed." A flurry of hands. Phones disappeared into pockets and purses. "Now, Julian," a new voice boomed. A large man with a florid, red face and the same arrogant chin as Tiffany pushed his way through the crowd. It was Robert Vanderbilt, Tiffany's father. "Julian, my boy, let's not make a scene," Robert said, putting a chummy hand on Blackwood's shoulder. "Kids will be kids. It's just a little harmless fun. The girl's wet, so what? I'll pay for her dry cleaning." He laughed, a big, hearty, fake laugh, expecting the crowd to join him. No one did. Blackwood looked at the hand on his shoulder with utter disdain. Robert Vanderbilt, noticing the look, slowly removed it. "Robert," Blackwood said, his voice dangerously soft. "Your daughter just assaulted an employee. Your son's friend did as well, and you and your friends stood here and laughed." "Now see here," Robert puffed, his face getting redder. "I don't know who you think you are, but you can't talk to me like that. I'm the biggest donor to this club's new tennis facility. I am this club." A low, dry chuckle came from Blackwood's throat. It was a terrifying sound. "You are this club, Robert? That's fascinating. I was under a different impression." He turned to the trembling, ashen-faced manager, who had finally materialized from the shadows. "Henderson." Yes, Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Vanderbilt here seems to believe he is the club. Would you care to correct him?" Henderson looked confused. He looked from Robert Vanderbilt, a man who could have him fired, to Julian Blackwood, the quiet, rumpled man who read books. Henderson, naturally, sided with the power he knew. "Mr. Blackwood, sir, with all due respect, Mr. Vanderbilt is our most esteemed member. Perhaps Ms. Reed did slip. She's been warned about her clumsiness." Maya, shivering in the heavy jacket, felt her last bit of hope die. Of course. They would all stick together. Blackwood looked at Henderson for a long, silent moment. "Henderson," he said, "you are, without a doubt, the most invertebrate, spineless man I have ever had the misfortune of employing." He paused. The word hung in the air. Employing. Robert Vanderbilt's eyes went wide. What did you say?" Blackwood ignored him and spoke to the crowd. "My apologies. I've allowed this performance to go on too long. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Julian Blackwood. My grandfather, Arthur Blackwood, built this club. My family's holding company, Blackwood Capital, has owned a 100% stake in this property since 1954. He gestured to the sprawling, multi-million-dollar clubhouse. "You're all, every single one of you, guests in my home." The silence was absolute. You could have heard a breadcrumb drop. Tiffany Vanderbilt looked like she had been struck by lightning. You're the hobo," she whispered, the words escaping her lips before she could stop them. Blackwood's icy gaze snapped to her. "I am Miss Vanderbilt, the man who has been quietly observing the rot that has infested this institution. The man who has been reading the endless, endless complaints about you and your friends and your father. And I am the man who is telling you, get out." "You can't," Tiffany stammered. "Henderson," Blackwood said, "call security. Have Miss Vanderbilt, Mr. Kensington, and Ms. St. James escorted from the property. Their memberships, and the memberships of their entire families, are revoked, effective immediately." "You can't do that," Robert Vanderbilt roared. "I'll sue you. I'll... Julian, the merger." This was the word that silenced the crowd again. Julian Blackwood turned to Robert Vanderbilt, a look of mild academic interest on his face. "The merger, Robert? Are you referring to the proposed acquisition of Vanderbilt Shipping by my logistics division?" "Yes, exactly," Robert blustered, sensing he'd found leverage. "Our boards are meeting on Monday. We're partners, Julian. You can't just... You need me." "A correction, Robert," Blackwood said, stepping closer, forcing the bigger man to take a step back. "My board was meeting on Monday to vote on a bailout. Your company, which you've been running into the ground for a decade, is 3 weeks from total insolvency. You don't need a partner, Robert. You need a savior. And I was, for reasons I can no longer fathom, considering the role." He looked around at the stunned faces. "Does anyone else," he projected, "have any business with Blackwood Capital they'd like to discuss in front of their friends?" The silence was deafening. "I thought not." He turned back to Robert. "The deal, Robert, is dead. My office will be sending you a bill for the due diligence my accountants performed. I'd advise you to pay it quickly." Robert Vanderbilt's face, which had been a florid red, was now a pasty, sickly grey. He was ruined. He knew it. Everyone here knew it. "Tiffany," he whispered, his voice a dry croak. You did this." Tiffany burst into tears, not the fake, manipulative tears of earlier, but the real, ugly, racking sobs of someone who has just watched her entire world evaporate. "Get them out of here, Henderson," Blackwood said, his voice tired. "And you're fired. Be out of your office by morning." Henderson's jaw dropped. "Sir, please! I have a family." "So does she," Blackwood said, nodding at Maya, who was watching the entire exchange as if it were a dream. "And you stood by and did nothing. In my world, Mr. Henderson, that is the same as pushing her in yourself. Security will see you all out." As uniformed security guards, who had been watching from the shadows, moved in to escort the crying Vanderbilts and the shell-shocked Henderson, Blackwood turned his full attention back to Maya. She was shaking, less from cold now and more from pure adrenaline and shock. "Ms. Reed," he said gently, His jacket was comically large on her, swallowing her small frame. "Mr. Blackwood," she whispered, her voice hoarse. My phone, it's in the pool. It had pictures of my mum." Blackwood's face softened. He looked into the pool at the dead device at the bottom. "We'll retrieve it, but I fear it's beyond repair." It's all I had," she whispered, and a fresh wave of despair hit her. What was a new phone to these people? To her, it was an archive of her entire life. Blackwood put a hand on her shoulder. "Nothing is ever gone for good, Ms. Reed. I promise you." He spoke to one of his security guards. "Stephen, please get Ms. Reed a hot shower in the staff lounge, find her some new clothes from the pro shop, charge it to my personal account, and then have my personal driver, Michael, take her home. In the Rolls." He then turned to the remaining silent crowd. They looked like statues. "The party," he announced, his voice echoing in the night, "is over. Please leave my property." There was no negotiation. Within 10 minutes, the entire club was empty, save for the staff. Maya was hurried away by the security guard, who treated her with the deference of a visiting royal. She was given a hot shower, a plush tracksuit, and a warm cup of tea. An hour later, she was sitting in the back of a gleaming, black Rolls-Royce. The leather seats softer than any bed she'd ever slept in. The driver, Michael, hadn't said a word, just opened her door and drove. As they pulled up to her small, shabby apartment building, Michael finally spoke. "Mr. Blackwood asked me to give you this." He handed her a thick white envelope. "What is it?" Maya asked, her hands trembling. "Your wages for the week, miss, as well as a severance. Mr. Blackwood assumes you will not be returning to the club." Maya opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. Her eyes went wide. It wasn't a few $100s. It was for $25,000. She gasped. I can't accept this." "Mr. Blackwood was very clear, miss," he said, and I quote, "This is not a gift. It's a settlement for assault, wrongful termination, and a hostile work environment. He said to tell you to pay your mother's medical bills and get some rest. Someone from his office will be in touch." Maya stumbled out of the car, the check clutched in her hand. She watched the $1 million car drive away from her $1 million slum. She walked up the stairs, past the peeling paint, and let herself into her apartment. Her mother was asleep. Maya sat at the kitchen table, the check laid out in front of her. She looked at the signature, Julian Blackwood. She put her head in her hands, and for the first time that night, she cried. Not from humiliation or fear, but from relief. The 3 days after the party were a strange, surreal fog. Maya and her mother existed in a bubble of quiet disbelief. The check, which Maya had deposited using her phone's mobile app, a terrifying, nerve-wracking process, was the first thing. The numbers in her bank account, which had never before exceeded 3 digits, suddenly looked like a typo. She moved like a woman in a dream. She walked to the pharmacy, the one with the curt, judgmental pharmacist who always sighed when Maya asked to pay for just 7 pills at a time. Maya walked in, her head held high, and handed over the stack of prescriptions. "I'd like to pay for 6 months, in advance, for all of these," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The pharmacist looked up, annoyed. "Ma'am, the total for that would be—" He typed, his eyes widening slightly. "That will be £7.40. He said it like a challenge. Maya slid her new debit card across the counter. "And can I get a bottle of the good vitamins, too? The ones in the glass jar." When she walked out, the plastic bag heavy with bottles, she had to lean against the brick wall for a full minute just to breathe. It wasn't just medicine. It was time. It was peace of mind. She paid their rent, 6 months in advance. The landlord, a gruff man named Mr. Petrov, looked at the cashier's check, then at her, then back at the check. Is everything all right, Ms. Reed? He asked, his voice suddenly laced with concern, as if the only way she could have this money was if someone had died. Everything is finally fine, Mr. Petrov, she said. That night, she and her mother didn't eat microwaved oatmeal. Maya went to a real grocery store, the expensive one downtown she always passed on the bus. She bought a small organic chicken, fresh asparagus, real lemons, and a pint of double fudge ice cream. They ate at their wobbly kitchen table, and her mother, Sarah, ate more than Maya had seen her eat in a year. "You're a hero, you know that?" Sarah said, her eyes shining with tears. "I got pushed in a pool, Mum," Maya said, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "No," Sarah insisted, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You endured. You endured all of it for me. And you never, ever let it make you hard. That's what a hero is." But beneath the profound, bone-deep relief, a new anxiety began to creep in. The $25,000, which had seemed like all the money in the world, was now, after the bills, closer to $15,000. It was a countdown clock, a generous, wonderful patch, but a patch nonetheless. The hole, the vast, gaping hole of their future, was still there. She was still a 19-year-old high school graduate with no job. Worse, the video Bree St. James had taken had, of course, gone viral in their small community. A friend from high school, who worked at a local diner, had called her. "Hey, I tried to put in a good word for you here," the friend said. "But my manager saw the video, the one from the Oasis. He said he can't hire a liability." So she was not just unemployed. She was infamous. The humiliation, which the check had briefly covered, came flooding back. She was that girl, the clumsy waitress who got pushed in the pool. She retreated to the one thing that made sense, her sketchbook. She drew, not for escape, but with a fierce, burning desperation. She drew a pedestrian bridge to replace the crumbling, fenced-off one in their local park. She designed it with a cantilevered viewing platform, with built-in planters, with ramps so elegant they were a feature, not an afterthought. She worked out the load-bearing requirements, the tensile strength of the cables, the exact materials she'd use for a non-slip, eco-friendly surface. She drew for 72 hours, stopping only to help her mother and eat toast. On the fourth day, the knock came. It wasn't a landlord knock. It was a crisp, polite, firm knock. Rat-a-tat-tat. Maya, in her threadbare sweats, opened the door. A woman in a steel-grey pantsuit that probably cost more than their rent stood on the landing. She was in her 40s, with a severe blonde bob and a tablet computer in her hands. She did not look impressed by the peeling paint on their doorframe. "Ms. Maya Reed?" she asked. Her voice was as sharp as her suit. "Yes." Maya's heart hammered. Was she being sued? Had the Vanderbilts found a loophole? "My name is Amanda. I am the executive administrator for the Blackwood Foundation. Mr. Blackwood has requested a meeting with you. He is waiting." "Waiting? Now?" "Mr. Blackwood is always waiting," Amanda said, not unkindly. "If you'll come with me. The car is downstairs." I have to." Maya looked back at her mother, who was watching from the couch, her face pale. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide but certain. "Go," she whispered. "Go." Maya ran to her room, threw on her one pair of good jeans, no holes, and a clean black t-shirt. She ran a brush through her hair, tying it back in a simple, low ponytail. It was the best she could do. The car was a black, gleaming Audi A8, so quiet it seemed to float. The ride downtown was silent. Maya stared out the window, watching the familiar, gritty landscape of her neighborhood, transform into the glass and steel canyons of the financial district. She felt like a stray cat being taken to the vet. They didn't just go to the Blackwood Capitol building, they ascended it, through a private garage into a private elevator that moved with sickening, silent speed. The doors opened directly into an office that was less a room and more a section of the sky. The walls were glass, all three of them, offering a 180-degree view of the city, the river, and the bridges that stitched it all together. Julian Blackwood was not behind his desk. He was standing in front of the windows, his back to her, holding a cup of coffee. "Ms. Reed, thank you for coming." He turned. Today, in his element, he was no hobo. He wore a simple, dark blue shirt and grey trousers, but the effect was one of terrifying competence. "Coffee? Water?" "No, thank you, sir," she whispered, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Sir, Mr. Blackwood," she began, the words tumbling out. I have to thank you. The money. You have no idea what it meant. You saved my mother's life. You saved my life." "The money," he said, waving a hand dismissively, "was a legal and moral obligation, a paltry fine for the behavior of my members and the negligence of my staff. We are not here to discuss the money." He walked over to a massive, polished table. On it, her sketchbook was laid open. But it wasn't just her sketchbook. There were other drawings, renderings, blueprints. "We are here," he said, "to discuss this." He tapped her drawing of the pedestrian bridge. "The variable stiffening truss," he said, as casually as if commenting on the weather. "A complex, innovative way to handle dynamic load distribution, particularly on a small-scale, high-traffic span. Where did you learn it?" Maya's jaw was open. I saw a lecture, online, from a professor at MIT. I thought it would work." "It does work," Blackwood said. He pointed to a large monitor on the wall that Maya hadn't even noticed. He tapped a button, and a 3D, fully rendered model of her bridge appeared. "My in-house engineering team ran a preliminary analysis last night. It's not just pretty, Miss Reed. It's sound, it's efficient, and it's better than the city's current plan, which I've seen, and which is, frankly, garbage." He then pointed to her other sketches, the low-cost modular housing, the community centre. "You are not a waitress, Miss Reed. You are an architect. You are an engineer. You just lack the paperwork." He walked to his desk and picked up a thick, leather-bound folder. "The Blackwood Foundation's primary charter is to find talent, raw, brilliant, unrecognized talent, and to provide it with the one thing it lacks, opportunity." "This," he said, sliding the folder across the desk, "is the acceptance packet for the National Institute of Design. Their application deadline was 4 months ago. I waived it." Maya opened it. Her name was at the top, and below it a list of words that made no sense. Full 4-year scholarship, tuition, room, board, a stipend for materials, books, and travel, and a personal laptop, the best one you can get. Maya's legs gave out. She sank into the leather chair opposite his desk, the folder clutched to her chest. Tears were streaming down her face. "Why? Why me? I'm nobody. Is this because you feel sorry for me? Because of the pool?" Blackwood's face, which had been patient, hardened slightly. "Pity. Ms. Reed, I am a billionaire. I don't make investments out of pity. Pity is a useless, self-congratulating emotion. I make investments based on potential." He came around the desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms. "Let me tell you a story. 40 years ago, I was a 19-year-old busboy at the Drake in Chicago. I was angry, I was smart, and I was so poor I used to steal bread from the kitchen just to eat. I spent my nights in the hotel library, teaching myself corporate law. One night, a guest saw me, a quiet old man named Mr. Harrison. He saw me correcting the math on a stock report I'd fished from the trash. The next day, he didn't give me a tip. He gave me a train ticket to New York and a note with an address. It was the admissions office at Columbia. He paid for everything. He looked at Maya, his eyes holding hers. He didn't see a bus boy, Miss Reed. He saw a mind. I am not Mr. Harrison, but I am paying back that debt. I did not see a waitress. I saw an architect. Maya was sobbing now, but quietly. I can't. Blackwood raised an eyebrow. I beg your pardon? I can't go, she whispered, the words tearing from her throat. My mother. She's sick. She has MS. I'm all she has. I can't leave her. She held up the folder. This is my dream. But she is my life. She stood up, placed the folder on his desk and pushed it toward him. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. You'll never know what this means. But I can't. She had turned and was halfway to the door when his voice stopped her. A person who is willing to sacrifice their future for their family is precisely the kind of person I want to invest in, Miss Reed, he said. It shows character. And in my world, integrity is more valuable than genius. She turned back. He hadn't moved. Did you think I was unaware of your mother's situation? Did you think my research was sloppy? He tapped his tablet. Dr. Lena Hansen, the top MS specialist in the state. She has reviewed your mother's files and is prepared to take her on as a new patient. Tomorrow. A lovely, ground floor, 2-bedroom apartment in the Mayfair building, 3 blocks from Dr. Hansen's clinic, has been leased in your mother's name. It's fully furnished. A private, certified nurse named Clara, who has 20 years of experience with MS patients, has been retained. The Blackwood Foundation healthcare plan will cover all of it. For as long as it's needed. Maya was speechless. This wasn't just a solution. This was a new world. She'll be safe? She will, Blackwood said, his voice softening. She will be comfortable. She will be cared for. And she will be able to watch her daughter graduate, summa cum laude. He pushed the folder back toward her. Say yes, Ms. Reed. She walked back, her steps sure, and picked up the folder. Yes, she said, her voice clear and strong. Yes. Thank you. Good, he said, a brief, genuine smile touching his lips. Now, school doesn't start for 3 weeks. You can't be idle. He picked up another, brand new, leather-bound sketchbook. The foundation is breaking ground on a new community art center in your old neighborhood. The lead architect is a genius, but she's difficult. Her name is Eleanor Vance. He handed the sketchbook to Maya. What? Eleanor was the second scholarship recipient my foundation ever sponsored, 20 years ago. She was a single mother working 3 jobs. She is the best structural architect in this country. She hates apprentices. She's expecting you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm assigning you to her as a paid apprentice. I want your design for the atrium. He walked her to the elevator. Don't be late, Ms. Reed, and don't disappoint me. I won't, she promised. As Maya rode the elevator down, she was no longer the girl from the apartment. She opened the new sketchbook. The paper was thick, creamy, and expensive. The first page was blank, a terrifying, beautiful, perfect blank. She walked out of the Blackwood Capitol building, not as a victim, not as a waitress, but as Maya Reed, apprentice to Eleanor Vance, student at the National Institute of Design. She stepped on to the crowded street. The sun was high, and the city gleamed. She looked up at the massive, soaring bridges that spanned the river, connecting one world to another. For the first time in her life, She wasn't just looking at them. She was analyzing them. She saw the stress points. She saw the flow of traffic. She saw with a sudden, bone-deep clarity how she would have built them better. And she knew, without a single doubt, that she would. Remember Maya's story. It started with a splash, with the sound of laughter and the feeling of utter hopelessness. But it didn't end there. It ended with a hand, reaching out, not with pity, but with opportunity. It reminds us that our true value is not in the uniform we wear or the job we work, but in the talent, the resilience, and the character we hold inside. And it reminds us that one person, one voice, can be the bridge between someone's humiliation and their destiny. If this story touched your heart, please, don't be a silent bystander. Hit that like button to show your support. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure you subscribe to our channel for more stories that change the way you see the world. Click that notification bell so you never miss a moment. Thank you for watching.